Did you guys have favorite sports teams, sports heroes from the metropolitan area?
Me personally, I was a Mets and Giants fan.
So, of course, then I liked the Yankees. I think I liked the Giants, too, at the time, and I still do. But Mets just didn't do it for me. Mets,
Yankees, indicative of a sibling rivalry, perhaps, as you grew up?
Not really.
Just in that regard, I think.
You guys went to Mountain High School. How are twin brothers received? Was there anything in particular, anything notable about the way your classmates treated you?
You know, we don't have any other siblings, so we don't know anything differently. So it's, you know, with nothing to compare it to, you know, I don't think we were, you know, we didn't feel any different. And
we weren't the only twins in the school. There were John and Mike Sarney,
yeah,
who were a couple years older. So, and they were identical twins as well. So it was kind of like a little bit more common.
But back then, you know, twins and, you know, multiple births were less common than they are today. So, you know, I don't, you know, at the time, I think those two guys were the only twins that I knew.
Did you hang out with those guys?
A little bit. We were both on the swim team and the track team together. And Scott and I both kind of took up pole vaulting on the track team, and the coach we had wasn't particularly interested in it. So we actually learned it from John and Mike Sarney.
You know, the subject of twins is always fascinating to people. They either do or do not understand what twins are all about. I'm just wondering, was it difficult growing up knowing there was a little clone of yourself right living with you, playing with you, going to school with you?
Like I said, you know, we didn't know anything differently, and, you know, he's not my clone.
You know, a lot of times people would ask, so what's it like to be a twin? And the response I would usually give is, well, what's it like not to be a twin? I mean, it's just, it is what it is.
It's more like he's my brother, but we just happen to have the same birthday, to me.
Did you guys take the same classes? Did you have similar academic interests as you went to school?
Yeah, I think I took the harder classes because, you know, he had a hard time with those.
You know, I think we just naturally gravitated towards similar interests because, you know, maybe it's somewhat genetically based, but also because we were always, you know, exposed to the same things growing up, and I think that somehow, you know, drives what you're interested in. So, you know, as far as, you know, maybe academic stuff, but also like what kind of sports and other interests were similar because of our, you know, similar upbringing.
You know, I think that throughout high school, I can only remember of being in one class together. Just
Spanish.
Kind of worked. Oh, okay, then two. Spanish and biology in 12th grade. AP biology.
They tried to, you know, in elementary school, for instance, we were never allowed to be in the same class. I don't know if that was a school system policy or it was my parents' desire, but that was actually, you know, prohibited. And then later in like junior high and high school, it was very rare for us to be in the same class.
Did you guys double date to further confuse the social situation?
Never. Never thought about it.
No.
Deliberately or just by coincidence?
Well, I think, you know, you know, if you had any brothers or sisters, you probably didn't go on double dates with them and their girlfriend or boyfriend. It's kind of like the same thing. It just seems a little bit odd.
I don't think I've ever gone on a double date with anyone. So.
Did you ever pull pranks in school by impersonating each other?
Actually, not one time. And I think it was because very early on, we would get a lot of pressure to do that. And we just didn't want to, you know, go with the peer pressure. I mean, I would say almost weekly, somebody would say, you guys should do this, you should switch classes, you know. So we, you know, very early on, we just said, no, we're not going to do that.
Who's got the better sense of humor, speaking of pranks?
I don't know. That's for somebody else to decide.